Welcome to Pacific Northwest Mike Check, where Mike Connolly, owner of Windermere Real Estate Central Inc. in Kirkland, shares his lifetime of experiences as a successful businessman, real estate broker, and Pacific Northwest enthusiast. Throughout this podcast, Mike will be interviewing passionate experts in the industry who will give you a new perspective on the world of real estate, business, and life.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pacific Northwest Mike Check. Good to have you on board. If you are just joining our podcast, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, thanks for your viewership. And today, I am excited to have on board Russ Hokanson. Russ is the CEO of Seattle King County Realtors and longtime associate of Windermere Real Estate, certainly, and myself as well. So really excited to have you on board, Russ. Welcome.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. We'll cover a little bit in our time. But before we get into kind of the business of real estate, it'd be nice to know a little bit more about you. I saw your looked at your resume a little bit. I didn't know you went to Occidental College, University of Washington, Georgetown. Kind of impressive resume of schools. Where did you grow up? What was your path to leadership in the association?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'm a local guy. I'm a Queen Anne guy. Grew up on Queen Anne Hill with a large family. Went to school there. Graduated from Queen Anne High School before they turned it into condominiums that our members sell today. So yeah, I'm very much a product of the Northwest. I went to Occidental College for 2 years, my first couple of years, because I was anxious to get away from home. I mean, I don't know what, someone fresh out of high school and wanting a new experience, that was like ideal for me. But I realized what a good thing I had in the Northwest. So I came back and graduated from the University of Washington and then had the good fortune to land an internship with Congressman Joel Pritchard, who represented the first congressional district in Washington at that time, and went to work for him in his Seattle office. And that turned into an offer for full-time employment as a legislative aide in Washington, D.C. So I went to Washington, D.C. and worked for him there for about 4 years before he retired. And during that time, I got my graduate degree at Georgetown University, which was another great school work experience. And so one of my pathways to the Realtor Association was based on that congressional staff experience. When you work for a member of Congress, you spend all day long listening to other people. And that was my job, to listen to constituents, to write down what they had to say, to understand what their views were. So that helped me become a very good listener and to sort of understand the motivations of people who are in leadership positions and how they work with others to come to agreement. And so that was a very formative path in my life. But when I came back to Washington State after I worked in Washington, D.C., I actually worked for Joel when he was the lieutenant governor for 1 year in Olympia, and I was his staff director then. And then I decided, hey, I got to get out of the political world. I want to be in the private sector. And so I went to work for a telecommunications company. And that was kind of my second pathway to the Realtor Association, because in a regulated industry like telecommunications, the big differentiator for you there is customer service. You've got to be all about the customer, serving the customer, understanding what they want, and delivering that to them. And so that was a really valuable experience for me. And then in the mid-90s, the Growth Management Act had been passed. Realtor associations were looking for, how are we going to deal with all the regulations that are happening at the local level that affect housing supply and land use and our ability to provide things for consumers. So that opened an opportunity for me. I was kind of a guy, hey, I can deal with the politics. I can deal with the customer service. I don't know a lot about real estate, but I can figure that out. And that was my pathway as the government affairs director to the Snohomish County Association of Realtors. And since that time, I've been in association management.
Wow, I love that history. So you're on a quick learning curve for real estate, but At some point, somebody said, Russ, we'd love to have you lead us at Seattle, King County, and you've been doing that for 16 years.
Yeah, I actually, the King County Association is a great organization to work for. 7,800 brokers, all sorts of issues in King County, big cities, small cities. And a lot of what we do is helping develop leaders in the real estate industry. I work for members of Congress. I work for the lieutenant governor. They're sort of trained to be leaders. Our elected leaders in the Realtor Association don't always have that background. So one of my biggest roles is to help them develop as leaders in the industry of the association, knowing the ins and outs of how to relate to people, manage people, because they do that very successfully in their business. Translating that into how you do that in a member organization actually takes some time and some skill and some learning. And so that's one of the important roles that I play in our organization.
Yeah, and I got to say, as an observer of you for so many years, you have mentored a lot of people and taken them down that path. So congratulations to you.
Thanks. I enjoy it. It's a great job.
I know you do.
Well, the Association of Realtors is a huge organization. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the largest trade organization in the country.
Yes, it is.
That's incredible. So you kind of touched upon it, but would you explain how that works on the national, state, and local levels and how that all works together?
Sure. Great. Thanks for the question. So the National Association of Realtors is the largest trade association in the country, 1.5 million members in 50 states and I think 4 different territories. And the Realtor brand is actually international, but for purposes of our conversation today, the NAR, as we refer to it, National Association of Realtors, is the umbrella organization for all the local realtor associations in the country. And there are about 1,300 of them throughout the U.S. And so the National Association, coined or owns the term realtor, but we as the Seattle King County Realtors operate basically as one of their local chapters. But we all have a say in how the national organization operates and what they focus on. And then, of course, we have a state association, the Washington Realtors, that operates as well in a very cooperative fashion. So I talked a minute ago about Congress and, my experience there. The National Association of Realtors is kind of like a Congress. It has a board of directors that has representatives from around the country. They're all professionals. They have expertise. It's all about getting agreement among those professionals about what we can do to advance the industry, to make things better for real estate, to make things better for consumers. And when you think about how real estate is transacted around the world, the U.S. model is really a model that the rest of the world looks to because it's so consumer friendly, it's consumer centric, it's thinking about what's in the best interest of the consumer. And so our members do a great job of cooperating to act in the best interest of consumers.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, our Seattle King County Realtors, SKCA for short, is an organization of more than 8,000 real estate brokers in the Puget Sound area of Seattle. And you've led this team, like you mentioned, for 16 years, over a year's time. So let's bring that down to just 1 year, the timeline of a year. What's accomplished by your team?
Yeah, great question. And I would say that, what really drives our organization is our mission. What is our mission? What does the association do? And we're really focused on trying to create an environment that is ethical and professional so that our members can achieve success. And we do that through education, through advocacy, and providing tools to those members so they can flourish in the industry. So, during the course of a year, we might have several successful education events or offer new educational offerings so our members stay up to speed and keep their licenses active. We do a terrific event called Battle of the Barristers where we have attorneys come in. We had 740 people who participated in that event last year. Our members love the latest legal education that they can get because that's so important in their business. So, making sure that members get the best education that they can. And we're always advocating for particular issues. So in any given year, we're taking on a legislative product, whether or task, whether it be at a city or at the state level, or even nationally, we're getting involved in issues that impact real estate, that impact the ability of our members to close a transaction and for consumers to get the kind of housing that they want to get. So I would say for anybody who's interested in what we do and how we operate, we have an annual report that we post on our website, talks about all the things that we do, all the things that we achieve. And let me add one other thing to that. I talked about mission, and our mission has traditionally been about what we do. And we crafted a new mission statement this last year, and it really focused on who we are as realtors. And realtors view themselves as leaders in the community because they are. So we lead through professionalism, through outreach in communities, through ethical business conduct, and for housing advocacy, which is sort of our biggest role. So it's kind of interesting as the association has changed. We've gone from, hey, what are we doing, to who we are, and we need to be the best that we can be, and let's show that we are leaders in the community. So it's kind of exciting to work that through with the board of directors.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into the next question, which the association says that protecting private property is one of their primary missions. And then you brought up government affairs and your involvement there. So kind of digging down into that. This is kind of a busy time of the year when the state legislature is in session, and this committee's, but the committee continues to work throughout the year. So how and where does that mission come into play here?
Yeah, I mean, again, back to mission statement. So, private property is the basis for so much of our economy. And if you look at the Realtor Code of Ethics, it starts with a line: under all is the land, and the widest and best use and distribution of it is what drives our economy. Or I'm sort of paraphrasing what it says, but that really drives what we do. I mean, real estate is such an important segment of our economy. So you mentioned our Government Affairs Committee, Mike. So what the Government Affairs Committee is, it's a group of our members who are very focused on what do we need to do to create greater housing supply? What do we need to do to make sure that transactions are smooth and available for consumers in our area? So they look at every issue. It could be endorsing a school bond measure, or it could be dealing with a sign code in a particular city, or it could be state legislation that affects the Form 17 that everybody's involved with. So members who are very much engaged in issues that affect the business, trying to make those pro-consumer, so that we all have a livelihood that we can pursue in the real estate industry. And it's all driven by members. So we take feedback from what the members see and need to be addressed. So if you want, I can dig down on one issue to give you an example. I mean, we've been focusing on housing supply for the last 10 years, and that's a really difficult nut to crack. I mentioned the GMA was kind of the first thing that got me involved in the association 27 years ago, the Growth Management Act. And that's it kind of makes it tough for producing new housing inventory in the state of Washington. We've had tremendous economic and job growth, but our housing supply hasn't kept pace with that. So what can we do at the local level, the state level, to improve that? So there's a bill right now in the legislature that we're strong advocates of. It is expanding the use of accessory dwelling units in every city. So the state legislature is going to say, every city, you should have an ordinance that allows the reasonable use of accessory dwelling units and not limit that as an option for housing within your city. We're trying to use the real estate excise tax, which the state collects on the sale of every property, and provide a portion of that to cities as an incentive if they will create more housing units above and beyond what their comprehensive plan calls for, because their plans just haven't kept pace with what the market demand is. And so again, there are issues every day that we're digging in on that can make a difference in the housing supply and that can make a difference in how members are able to do business in our area.
Yeah, and that is one thing. Matter of fact, I was on the phone with Sam Pace yesterday, which is a incredible Seattle King County resource, right? And he was very helpful on one issue there as well. So pretty active group of folks in a busy time of the year. So I'm going to pivot on you a little bit. Our country now is recognizing the need right now to address social injustice in a big way over the course of the last few years. And the association is addressing it very proactively. I notice you've got The Color of Law right there behind you, which is a good book that addresses a lot of these issues. What was accomplished in 2020 and 21 pandemic years by your team with regard to addressing these issues?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mike. So, 2020 was like, we entered that year thinking, hey, we're going to have another great year in real estate. And then the pandemic hits, and all of a sudden, our business was shut down. We couldn't do anything. And a little pitch here, thanks to the Realtor Association, we went to the governor's office, went to other people and said, hey, look, there's no reason that real estate can't be performed safely, even in the midst of a pandemic. You've got to let us close these transactions that are in the pipeline. Can't we make that happen? And so, we got business back up and running, thankfully, and our members showed that we could do business safely. And I don't know if anybody's looked at the statistics from 2020, but we went from, we kind of cratered in March and April. And then by August, we were back up setting a record like we'd never seen before, because that pent-up demand that we weren't able to satisfy, we did later in the year. But your question was, how did we deal with kind of the tumultuous conversation about discrimination and inequity, and how the real estate community should deal with that? And this book here, The Color of Law, is a great example of that. Is that, the real estate industry had a time when it had, I don't want to say promoted, but it was involved with discriminatory practices related to real estate. And so I think our organization had to acknowledge that, hey, we had a role in that, and it's time for us to pay greater attention to fair housing laws, and what we can do going forward to make sure that those are respected by every professional in the business. But let's keep in mind, more than 50% of our members were born after the passage of the Fair Housing Act. So it's like, we want to acknowledge the history of maybe not having the greatest practices, but going forward, we're in an environment where we are promoters of fair housing. That's part of our job, and we should do that day in and day out. So number one was, I think we acknowledge what the history is and what our role should be going forward in promoting fair housing for everyone. So we did a whole series of articles on the history of fair housing, what the practices should be by professionals, and sort of acknowledge that whole piece of history on our website. And then we said, but we need to do more than that. So the following year, in 2021, we established a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, because we realized that, real estate goes through every community. We represent, everybody in the community, and our members are very diverse, but our membership hasn't always reflected that diversity. So what can we do to make sure that our membership is as diverse as the community at large? So that's a project that we're working on right now. And we're very thankful that one of your brokers, Samantha Enos, is the chair of that effort for the association. And I know she's also doing that for the Windermere Company. So that's what we're trying to do. We have a long ways to go, but I think we've had a good start. We've acknowledged our history, and we're figuring out, okay, what do we do positively going forward? Because we have a big role to play in that.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the path that you all are taking, and oh, by the way, in cooperation with a lot of other industry leaders out there. So, tip of the hat to quick action there. So,
yeah. Amazing. Well, what is one piece of advice that you would give our listeners? So any brokers who are listening right now, what piece of advice would you give to them if they were sitting right in front of you right now?
Well, it's one piece of advice with two variations. If you're a broker, make sure that you're a realtor. I mean, you need to be a member of your professional trade organization. It shows a commitment to professionalism. It shows a commitment to the industry. You can help us improve by being involved with us. Don't be on the sidelines. Be part of what we're doing. And statistics show that 80 to 90% of all transactions are done by brokers who are realtor members. So make sure that you're a member of the organization or you're affiliated with a company that is a member of the organization. And if you're a consumer listening, use a realtor because they represent the best in the industry and they're going to represent your interest in any real estate transaction to the highest degree possible. So that's my advice.
Great.
That is great advice. I thought there was going to be a third, Russ, and that would be if you're a realtor, get involved and contribute. The one thing I got to say is I had the honor of representing Windermere Real Estate on that national board that you referenced earlier, and Russ, you were a great shepherd and mentor as I started fumbling around that process because it is a big step to take to get involved in that arena.
Well, thanks for the compliment, Mike. And I would just say, adding on to what you said, I mean, we are an organization that relies on the involvement of our members to go forward. I mean, you are the people that have the expertise. I'm a guy that manages things for the board, but the members are the ones that have the actual knowledge. So we have an organization that's very representational that allows everyone to have input in what we're doing. All it takes is the commitment on your part to be involved in what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think the overarching theme here is get involved. Whatever level you're at, get involved. So that takes us right to our signature questions, which are arguably the most difficult questions we'll ask in the whole podcast. And the first question is, what does the Pacific Northwest mean to you?
Home. Pacific Northwest is home. I love the water. I love the sky. I love the mountains. I'm pathetic. I love the gray. I mean, I'm used to that.
Russ.
I just, I grew up with it. It's part of who I am. So yeah, it's home, and I love everything about the Northwest.
Yeah. Well, and this is, in my opinion, the toughest because I don't know how I could answer this question. I haven't even tried. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, Russ, what would it be?
Well, Mike, if you can't answer the question, why are you asking me?
Because I'm just trying to vet so I can maybe come up with a solution for myself.
All right. So I'm going to punt a little bit. I get bored easily. So I couldn't imagine, listening to one song over and over again. But I was blessed to have an uncle who was a concert pianist. And so I got kind of an appreciation for classical music at a young age. So if I were to listen to one piece of music or be limited to just one piece of music over and over again, it would probably be a symphony that has some complexity and theme and kind of a story. So maybe Beethoven's Sixth or Beethoven's Ninth or something like that.
Yeah. Good choices. All you could listen to that for a long time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to get some more insight on exactly what it is that you do and the impact that you and the Seattle-King County Realtors Association makes. So thank you so much. I'm sure our listeners will love to listen to this episode.
Well, Sophia, thank you for the questions. And Mike, it's a pleasure talking to you. I hope we do it again soon. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Russ. Thanks a million.
Well, thank you so much to Russ. That leads us right into our second segment of the podcast. For anyone new to our podcast, our Pacific Northwest Mike Check has 3 different segments. So the first one is called Getting Real, and that's our interview portion. And then we have Mike Check, which is a piece of advice from Mike. And then we usually close out with Open Mic, which is a forum where listeners can send in their questions on any of our social media platforms or visit us on our website, send us an email. And Mike will answer your questions. It can be anything about business, life, real estate, entrepreneurship. Those are our 3 segments. And if you have been listening to our podcast, you know that Mike gives great advice. So what is your piece of advice for us today, Mike?
Well, today it's back to the market. And right now, what we're experiencing is the same very high level of demand that's going on out there. The one piece of advice I would suggest right now is be aware of interest rates. Stay close to your loan representative and understand that we're potentially going to, probably a little later in the year, lose some buying power as interest rates increase. So that is kind of the forecast out there. But watch those interest rates, keep your buying power in place, and take advantage of the inventory that is out there.
That's great advice. Great advice. All right. Well, that takes us to open mic. And we got 2 questions this time. And the first question, someone wrote in, our family is thinking about moving to Kirkland this summer. We have 2 kids in elementary school. Are there any specific areas you'd recommend we look into?
All of Kirkland is fantastic. Lake Washington School District is the school district that supervises here, if you will, and they have just got a tremendous record of parent involvement and growth. So Kirkland's a great place to be for that.
Yeah, great place to raise a family. Okay, and then our second question is, where did you get the inspiration for your new office building?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the short story is we had been looking for a space. We had leased space for a long, long time. And it was BJ and I's goal to own our own building. And as we went down that road, we made offers, not unlike people making offers on homes. We made offers on several buildings, a lot of multiple offers. We didn't win the day. And then the fellow that had been doing our feasibility studies for us came along with a set of plans and said, what do you think of this? Wow. And it was what we were looking for. And it was almost, he partly did. He designed it for us. So that was our path down there. And now we've been in here 5 months.
Yeah. It's a beautiful building. If anyone has a chance to drive by, take a look from the outside, or if you want to take a look on the inside, we actually recorded an episode of this podcast with you walking through the building, answering questions, which was really awesome. So you get kind of like an inside look at the office. So check that out on our YouTube.
It was a fun podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in to our 15th episode of Pacific Northwest Mike Check. Mike, as always, it's been a pleasure. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Pacific Northwest Mike Check. Tune in every first Wednesday of the month to learn something new about real estate, business, and life.